Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we welcome everyone. Why are you standing? We, we welcome everyone for today's morning program. Hare Krishna. Can the sound be a little bit reduced? Muted for a second. The sound. All right. ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयं मुदीरयत् नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमा श्लोके भक्ते भवति नैष्टकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाशतादिशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna, we welcome everyone once again for this ongoing Bhagavad live series. We're on the 15th chapter of Canto 1. So let's start our discussion. It's going to be a little longer. So let's begin with it immediately. So back at the presentation, this is briefly what we have discussed so far. Up to chapter 11th, it was discussed that Lord Shri Krishna have returned to Dwarka, and at the end of it, in the beginning of 12th chapter, then Shaunakadi Rishi reminded Sutta Goswami of that question, that please tell us what happened after Parishit Maharaj's birth. So that's how chapter 12 begins. I'm just going to do a quick recap of a few important things, how the flow of discussion going on. Because in between, there was a little bit mix of stories, so you understand the flow of it. Therefore, I'll give you a quick recap of it. So chapter 12 is where the discussion resumes after Parikshit Maharaj's birth. In that chapter, the discussion was about the circumstances, once again was reiterated for Parikshit Maharaj's birth. Then when Parikshit Maharaj's birth his appearance happened, then Yudhishthira Maharaj requested Brahmanas and astrologers to predict about his future activities. After that, it is mentioned that how Yudhishthira Maharaj raised Parikshit Maharaj with all love and care, proper training. And then it was described how Yudhishthira Maharaj was still feeling guilty for the deaths of crores and crores of men who have died on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So therefore, at that point in time, Yudhishthira Maharaj wanted to perform another austerity known as Ashwamedh Yajna. But to perform Ashwamedh Yajna, a lot of wealth was needed, and all the treasury was already kind of exhausted during the war of Kurukshetra. So Lord Shri Krishna was sent an invitation. Krishna came back and Krishna helped Yudhishthira Maharaj and Pandavas in organizing this Ashwamedh Yagya. And after that, Lord Shri Krishna departed. That's how the chapter 12 ended. Now, when Lord Shri Krishna at this point in time departed after the successful completion of Ashwamedh Yagya, I had made a point when we discussed chapter 12 that that was the last visit of Lord Shri Krishna to Hastinapur. Pandavas, nobody was aware of it. And then Lord Shri Krishna came back to Dwarka. And then we had discussed briefly about what happened with Lord Shri Krishna at Dwarka, or what was his next course of action. So it is mentioned when Lord Shri Krishna departed from Hastinapur, came to Dwarka. At that point of time, it is not exactly mentioned after how much time, but then Devatas, particularly headed by Brahmaji and other Devatas, appeared to Lord Shri Krishna at Dwarka. They offered their prayers and respects and then kind of indicated that, my dear Lord, for the purpose for which we had requested you to descend, that purpose has been accomplished. All the asuras have been annihilated. Now it's up to you if you wish to continue or if you wish to wind up your pastimes or leelas, you may do so. So that was an indication for Lord, and Lord understood that my purpose for descent has been completed. But before Lord Shri Krishna would conclude his pastimes, he also wanted to ensure the very powerful dynasty remaining behind, the Yadus. Most of the Yadus were either the eternal associates of the Lord who descended from the spiritual world, or very powerful expansions of various devatas. And the Lord Shri Krishna began to think, if I conclude my Leela, if I disappear, then what will happen to the Yadus? And who will take care of them? They are so powerful that nobody could face them. So example is given, just like a forest fire happens by the brushing of, by the friction of two stones, or let's say maybe with the wood, and the fire ignites. Similarly, Lord Shri Krishna decided to perform another incident where the Yadus situation will be created, where Yadus would be forced to fight with each other, and that's what happened. So we have discussed all this thing last time, so I'm not going to go in details. So that's how the Yadu Vamsa, most of it, except for the seniors, the elders, the Varishthas, and as well as women, they had left behind or remained behind at Dwarka, but all the young people, actually, they got drunk. There was a whole story of curse and etc. They fought with each other and they killed themselves. Finally, Lord Shri Krishna, just before concluding his pastime, Uddhava came and met Lord Shri Krishna, and that's the time Lord Shri Krishna spoke to Uddhava, which is known as Bhagavad-Gita. 11th Canto Srimad Bhagavatam talks about it, and Maitra Muni also came. And that's the time Lord Shri Krishna instructed Uddhava that you are going to stay back. You're not going back to spiritual right now. You should go to Badrinath and you be there with the sages and preach my message, preach the glories that we have discussed, and continue that message there. After that, Lord Shri Krishna concluded his pastimes, and as we know how he concluded his pastime, the situation was the hunter by the name of Jara, he had shot an arrow at the feet of the Lord, and piercing the feet of the Lord is considered to be a situation at the time when Lord Shri Krishna departed from this world. So here I'm going to raise two important questions to begin our session for today. The very first question is, can Krishna really die just by a mere arrow? Because that's what happened. Jara, thinking that that's a deer, he shot an arrow, but unfortunately when he came to this place where he shot an arrow, he realized that it was actually not a deer, but Lord Shri Krishna's feet. So can Krishna be killed just by an arrow? All of you, please go back in your memory lane. 18 days of war, 9th day war of Kurukshetra, when Bhishma had decided that I'm going to kill Arjuna, and he really fought fiercely. Arjuna was almost on the brink of death. At that point of time, Lord Shri Krishna jumped from the chariot, picked up the chariot wheel, and he was running towards Bhishma. And then we just read in Bhishma's prayers, Bhishma recalls that incident, and he said, my dear Lord, your body was pierced by so many arrows of mine. It was looking like as if there is a volcanic eruption and the lava is spilled all over the place. When volcanic eruption are there are dark clouds, there's a dark smoke, and there's all darkness all around, and then the lava erupts. So your beautiful form, darkish complexion, was looking exactly decorated like a volcanic mountain, decorated with the lava. So the lava here refers to the blood oozing out from the body of Lord Shri Krishna. So Bhishma's arrows, can you compare the strength of the arrow of Bhishma and that of a Jara the hunter? If Bhishma is shooting an arrow and Jara is shooting an arrow, there's a tremendous difference. And not one arrow, there was several arrows that were piercing the body of Lord Shri Krishna. Then Lord Shri Krishna did not succumb to injury. How could just by merely shooting of arrow of a Jara, Lord Shri Krishna can succumb to injury? That's not possible. So question may arise, oh, so it means Lord's body also oozes blood? No, that's not a fact. Just like Lord Shri Krishna as Lala or Kanhaiya, a small baby, when Mother Yashoda will pick a stick, Krishna will run away out of fear. Now, how can Krishna, the Supreme Personality Godhead, scriptures describe the fear personified is fearful of Krishna? How can that Krishna, who is always God, not that when he grew up became God, Krishna was God as much as he was God when he was born, he was growing up, or he is grown up. Krishna is always God. How can Krishna, the Supreme Personality Godhead, be ever scared of a young woman? Not a young woman, of a simple woman. So Krishna wanted to reciprocate, experience Vatsalya Ras, where the parents take the edge of protecting, chastising the child. There could not be any Vatsalya Ras if Krishna would have to act in his position as a Supreme Personality Godhead. Similarly, with Bhishma, Krishna wanted to experience Virya Ras. And in Virya Ras, there could not be any exchange of Virya Ras. If Lord, if you imagine Bhishma is shooting the arrow and Krishna has Satchidananda form, all the arrows passes through the body of Krishna, then Bhishma will become discouraged. Now, when you're having a fight, just like Hiranyakashipu and Narasimhadev was having a fight, now Lord wanted to reciprocate and experience Virya Ras. So imagine when Hiranyakashipu and Lord Narasimhadev was fighting. In the beginning, Lord Narasimhadev captured Hiranyakashipu, and as if Hiranyakashipu was about to be killed. And suddenly, Hiranyakashipu came out of the clutches of Lord Narasimhadev, and then he caught Narasimhadev as if he's about to kill Narasimhadev. And all the Devtas, when they were watching, in the beginning, they thought, yes, Narasimhadev is winning. So they were showering flowers. And when Hiranyakashipu slipped out of the hands of Narasimhadev and Hiranyakashipu got an edge, all the Devtas ran away. They thought Narasimhadev is going to die. So, but that was not the fact. So why did Lord do that? That is called as Virya Ras, exchange. So there are different emotions involved. So in a fight, there is also fear, there is also anger, different emotions that has to be exhibited. So similarly, this concluding pastime, everything that Krishna performs is called pastime. Everything that what we do is our karmic reaction. It's not pastime, okay? It's not Leela. We're not performing Leela. We're not living according to Leela. So Lord Shri Krishna, to conclude his pastime, also wanted to have another incident here where Jara, this hunter, was kind of inspired by the Lord. We'll give you the references from the scriptures, and this situation happened. Now you may ask, why Lord Shri Krishna had to do like this? Lord Shri Krishna could have just simply disappeared. Why he had to create an incident where he had to be shot by had to be apparently killed by an arrow? It is mentioned by the Acharyas that Krishna did that so that all those who are envious of the Lord, all those who are doubtful about the divinity of the Lord, may continue to find faults with the Lord and continue to suffer in the material world. They have another excuse to blame the Lord or to say the Lord does not exist or Krishna is not the Supreme Personality Godhead. So can Krishna really die by an arrow? For a reason, for a fact, can Krishna ever die? For example, Sandipani Muni, when Krishna and Balram's training had got over, Sandipani Muni, for Guru Dakshina, Krishna Balram asked Sandipani Muni, my dear spiritual master, my dear Gurudev, what can we do for you? What can we give as Guru Dakshina? Then Sandipani Muni's wife requested Krishna Balram that our only son have disappeared long ago. We are not able to find. We know that much that he was last seen at the bank of ocean. After that, we have not seen. We are afraid Samudra Devta have devoured or captured our son. Please protect our son, bring our son back. Krishna Balram went to the Samudra Devta, didn't find. Finally, Lord Shri Krishna and Balram reached Yamlok at Yamrajji's abode. And what happened when Lord Shri Krishna reached Yamrajji's abode? It is mentioned in 10th Canto, 45th chapter, 45th verse. As soon as Krishna Balram entered at Yamrajji's abode, Yamrajji, who all of us have seen millions and unlimited times, and our interaction with Yamrajji was not at all pleasant. The fact is, we are still in the material world. He has each time given us some or other punishment and has sent us to different yonis. However, when Krishna and Balram entered the assembly hall of Yamraj, Yamraj got from his seat and ran and fell at the feet of Krishna and Balram, because now the worshipable Lord of Yamrajji, Lord Shri Krishna, have appeared in his Yamloka. At that point in time, Lord Shri Krishna, Yamrajji asked, my dear Lord, what can I do for you? Krishna said, which is mentioned in the verse as you see on the slide. Suffering the bondage of the past activity my spiritual master sent was brought here to you. O great king, obey my command and bring this boy to me without delay. Krishna is saying, obey my command. And Krishna was hardly a teenager. And Krishna is always a teenager, by the way. He's always like sweet 16. At this point in time, when they finished their training in Gurukula Sandipani Muni ashram, they were not more than 13 or 14-year-old boy. A 13 or a 14-year-old boy is telling Yamraj, the universal punisher, the one who gives punishment to all, obey my commands. And what did Yamraj said? Yamraj didn't laugh. Oh, you kids, what are you talking about? Yamraj says, so be it. And brought forth the Guru's son. And then those two exalted Yadus presented the boy to their spiritual master and said to him, please select another one. The point I'm raising here is, if Krishna can rescue anyone, bring back dead people from the abode of Yamraj, then who could cause death of Krishna? Therefore, Krishna in Bhagavad-Gita 4th chapter says, Janma karma chame divyam evam yuveti tatvataha tyaktva deham puna janmana iti mameti swarjanaha. So one who knows the transcendental nature of my birth and activities after giving up this body does not take birth again. All right, second question. But what happened to Jara? He committed a severe offense. When Lord Shri Krishna had performed another pastime of saying that I have got a headache, and Narad Muni came and asked, my dear Lord, how can we alleviate how can we subside your headache? Lord Krishna said, only the dust of the lotus feet of my devotees can subside my headache. Nobody, Brahma, Shiva, everyone Narad Muni went to, they all said, no, how can our dust be put on the head of the Lord? Will be put into the hell for all the time to come. Now imagine Jara, what is more painful? Putting a dust of your feet on the head or shooting an arrow? Now Jara had shot an arrow. It pierced the feet of the Lord. Now again, how can the Lord's feet be pierced when his body is Satchidananda? Again, this is again a Leela manifestation of the Lord. What happened to Jara, who committed such a grievous offense? Lord Shri Krishna says, 11th canto mentions, Supreme Personality of Godhead told or said to Jara, my dear Jara, do not fear. Please get up. So when Jara came to the spot and he saw that he has pierced the feet of Lord Shri Krishna, he fell unconscious. And when he came back to his consciousness, he began to plead and ask for forgiveness. He had tears in his eyes. He was trembling out of fear and said, my dear Lord, please forgive me, please forgive me. At that point of time, you can see how he's fallen at the feet of the Lord and begging forgiveness. At that point of time, Krishna said, my dear Jara, do not fear. Please get up. What has been done is actually my own desire. With my permission, go now to the abode of the pious spiritual world. Lord Shri Krishna called for the Vaikuntha airline. So instructed by the Supreme Lord Krishna, who assumes his transcendental body by his own will, the hunter circumambulated the Lord 3 times and bowed down to him. Then the hunter departed in an airplane that had appeared just to carry him to the spiritual sky. What was the destination of the Jara? He went back to Godhead. So in other words, Jara himself must be a pure devotee of the Lord, and Lord selected him. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu selected Ishwar Puri to be his spiritual master, Krishna selected Sandipani Muni to be his spiritual master. Similarly, Krishna selected Jara to take part in this pastime with the Lord. And as Krishna mentioned to Jara, Jara, what has happened was my own desire. You have nothing to blame yourself. Now your course of time in this world is over. Go back to Godhead. So this is how the pastime concluded. Well, pastime didn't conclude at this point in time. Krishna called for Daruk and he said, it's time for me to conclude my pastime. And as soon as I disappear from this world, then what's going to happen? Within the next 7 days, the whole Dwarka will be submerged with water. But the elders of the Yadu Vamshas are still living in Dwarka, and the wives of Krishna and other ladies are still there in Dwarka. Hey Daruka, run to Dwarka where Arjuna is there, take shelter of Arjuna and deliver my final message to Arjuna. And what was the final message of Lord Shri Krishna? Arjuna, take everyone from Dwarka and bring them back to Hastinapur. And that is why Arjuna had got so delayed in returning back. He had been away from Hastinapur for so long because now he had to bring back everyone back to Hastinapur. So that's how this pastime concluded. And in the meantime, this is still continuation of chapter 12. I have not come to the chapter 13, what is happening. So now Uddhava, Krishna have disappeared. Arjuna have departed from Dwarka to come to Hastinapur. In between, Arjuna's army and Arjuna's whole entourage is camouflaged by some cowherd man. They attacked Arjuna's group, and all the queens, most of the queens were captured. Arjuna could not even lift his Gandhi Babu. What about shooting an arrow? He couldn't chant any of the celestial mantras to invoke celestial weapons. He could not fight in front of Arjuna's eyes. Everyone was captured, everything was stolen. That was the situation. And Arjuna is going to express in chapter 15 that we're going to read for today. So here, when Uddhava was walking through Badrinath or Himalayas, on the way, Viduraji met. And that's the time Uddhav told Viduraji that how Lord Shri Krishna and Yaduvamsha, all of them have concluded their pastime. And then when Vidura wanted to learn from Uddhava, Uddhava requested Vidura to go and meet Maitreya Muni. Vidura goes and meets Maitreya Muni, learns from Maitreya Muni everything, and once he understands that Kali Yuga have descended, Kali Yuga have started, the age of Kali has started. The age of Kali is marked by deceit, corruption, lie, all kind of abominable activities. When Vidura heard of this thing, he was terrified. He was petrified not for himself, but for his elder brother. Dhritarashtra, when he was so corrupted, even in the presence of Krishna, imagine how much corrupted he would become in the absence of Krishna and in the presence of Kali Yuga. Being worried for his situation and well-being, Vidura comes back to Hastinapur, and that's how your chapter 13 begins. So much have happened between chapter 12 and chapter 13. That's the reason I was covering and making this whole flow of story for all of you. Vidura comes back, as you know of that. He instructs Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra understood, goes to the forest. Within 7 days, he attains perfection in Ashtanga Yoga, burns up the fire, ignites the fire element within his body, and he burns his body, and Gandhari jumps into that burning fire, the pyre, and does sati. That's how the episode of the Dhritarashtra and Gandhari ends. And then we go to chapter 14. In the meantime, we are back at Hastinapur, where now Yudhishthira Maharaj is waiting for Arjuna. When would Arjuna return back? And that's the time when Yudhishthira Maharaj and Bhima are talking to each other. And that's what chapter 14 talks about, where Yudhishthira and Bhima are able to observe different bad omens. And the whole list of those bad omens are given. How Yudhishthira is saying something very inauspicious must have happened, because of which, look what is happening. The dogs are barking incessantly. The donkeys are braying. There's so much noise. There are shooting stars. The clouds are not raining water. They're throwing pus, mucus, bile, etc., etc. There is devastation everywhere. The earth is burning with fire. The wind is blowing too fast. So many things as a bad omen Yudhishthira describes, and Bhima and Yudhishthira are discussing like that. And then finally Arjuna enters in the 14th chapter. And when seeing the morose face of Arjuna, Yudhishthira Maharaj becomes doubly convinced. And then he began to ask Arjuna, what happened? Did anyone insult you? You could not protect anyone? You could not save anyone, etc., etc. Finally, after sharing all his different speculation, Yudhishthira asked Arjuna, is that you are depressed because Lord Shri Krishna have concluded his pastime? That is the 44th verse of chapter 14, with which chapter 14 ends. And now comes chapter number 15, titled as the Pandavas Retirement. Now Arjuna will answer Yudhishthira Maharaj. So this chapter, very beautiful chapter. We're going to discuss around 20 lessons from this chapter. And what this chapter talks about, Arjuna answers Yudhishthira Maharaj and he confirms, yes, Lord Shri Krishna have departed. And he goes into the memory lane of remembrance. He kind of goes into ecstasy, remembering Lord Shri Krishna. And strong viraha bhav, the feeling of separation develops in Arjuna that is being described. After talking to Yudhishthira Maharaj that Krishna have concluded his Leela, Yaduvamsha is destroyed, all of them have gone back. Then how did Yudhishthira reacted? How did Kunti reacted? And how did, after seeing the response of Yudhishthira Kunti, how did other brothers, or the 4 Pandavas reacted, seeing the response of Yudhishthira Maharaj? And how did the wives, Draupadi and Subhadra, reacted, seeing the response of Pandavas to Lord Shri Krishna's disappearance, is being described in this chapter 15. So, to briefly take a look at the contents, we'll go back to the book now. We'll read from the book. Is it possible for me to share the Veda base here? We can do that. So, I'll open the Veda base so you can see, and I hope all of our participants would have a copy of Srimad Bhagavatam. If not, then I'll try to share the Veda base here so that all of you could see what's going on. Just give me a quick second. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So can anyone confirm if this is visible on the YouTube now, the screen? Or do I need to do duplicate? If I, so is it visible now to everyone who are online? All right, great. I'll be going through my book, but for all of you, I've just switched on this Veda base, so all of you can also see what's going on. Do we have another mic here? No, so I'll have to read out. Okay, I'll read out. So let's begin with the first verse. I'll read only a few verses, not all the verses, and then we'll give you the flow of the discussion. So before we get into the second part of today's discussion, I'll briefly recap what we have discussed so far. We have discussed primarily what happened after Ashwamedh Yajna was performed when Krishna departed from Hastinapur, went to Dwarka. Then what all happened at Dwarka, which is described later on in the 11th canto. We briefly talked about it. Then how did Lord Shri Krishna disappear? We raised two important questions. Can Krishna be killed by an arrow? And second, what happened to Jara? And then we continue with the flow of discussion from 13th, 14th, and now we are on the 15th chapter, where Yudhishthira Maharaj will get the news that Krishna have departed. Sutavacha, text 1. Evam Krishna Sakha Krishna Bhratra Ragya Vikalpitaha Nana Shankaspadam Rupam Krishna Vishleshakarshitaha. Sutta Goswami said, Arjuna, the celebrated friend of Lord Shri Krishna, was grief-stricken because of his strong feeling of separation from Krishna. Over and above all, Maharaj Yudhishthira's speculative inquiries. In other words, Arjuna could not respond. His voice was choked up. Text number 2. Sutta Goswami describes, Shokena shushiyad vadana Ritsarojo hat prabha Vibhum tam evanu smaran Nashkno pratibhashitum. Shokena, he was so distressed, depressed. Shushid vadana. Vadana means throat or the mouth became completely choked up. Hit saroja, lotus-like heart. Hat prabha, lost the luster. Due to grief, Arjuna's mouth and lotus-like heart had dried up. Therefore, his body lost all luster. Now, remembering the Supreme Lord, he could hardly utter a word in reply. Text number 3. Sutta Goswami describes this situation further. Kracharena samstapaya suchaha panina marchanetrayo Purokshena samunatha pranayokam takyakataraha. Kracharena, very difficult. With great difficulty, Arjuna controlled his tears and he began to speak. And Arjuna cried. Before what Arjuna spoke to Yudhishthira, at this point of time, Arjuna cried loudly. What did he cry? Sutta Goswami says, Arjuna said, Sakhyam maitrim suhridam cha sarthayadishu samsmaran. Sakhyam, मेरा मित्र, मेरा वेल विशर, सुहृदम सारथी, जो मेरा सारथी भी था. Nirpam agrajam iti aha baspa gadaya gira. Heavily breathing, Arjuna is in great anxiety and pain, and remembering his best of the friends, his best well-wisher, the one who became his Sathi on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, such an intimate relationship with whom he shared. He began to cry loudly. And what did he say? That is mentioned in the next verse, verse number 5. Arjuna Vacha, very beautiful verse. Vanchitoham Maharaja. Arjuna said, My dear Lord, Maharaja, Vanchito, I have been left behind. Harina Bandurupina. Harina means Harlena, my Lord have disappeared. Yena me aparatam tejo. Not only my Lord have disappeared, my tej, my bala, my strength have also disappeared. Aparat means aparan, captured. Deva Vishmapanam Mahat. The teja, which even astonished the devatas, disappeared along with the disappearance of the Lord. So our very first lesson, so there are going to be 20 lessons. I hope all of you can write it down and then reflect on it later on. So very first lesson in this, I'll read out what Prabhupada says only, and then I'll explain. You might see on my screen, which I'm sharing, this is where is the first lesson. So here Arjuna is expressing that I have not only lost my dear friend, Lord Shri Krishna, as soon as Krishna disappeared, along with that, my strength, my bala, my tejo have also disappeared. And Prabhupada mentions something very, very important, the highlighted portion of the purport. The lesson is, no one should be puffed up for his powers borrowed from the Lord. The sane man should feel rather obliged to the Lord for such benedictions and must utilize such power for the service of the Lord. So there are two things we're going to talk about talent. The first thing about the talent or the skills which I mentioned here is nobody should be proud of his talents and skills, knowing the fact that it is God-given. Our intelligence, if you are intelligent, is a God-given. If you're beautiful, it's a God-given gift. If you're strong and has a strength, it's a God-given gift. This is not something that we have acquired on our own. There's no way we can do that. You cannot change the intellectual level of an individual. You can call a person a fool, but you cannot make a fool a wise. Person is whatever he or she is. So we should not be proud of the borrowed plumes. This is one of the very interesting statements which will come later on also. So the very first lesson is the skills, the talents, the powers that we have can be withdrawn at any time. We are not the owners of it. Supreme Lord Krishna is the owner of it. And through this pastime, which is described in the purport, which I told before also, Arjuna could not lift his Gandiva bow to fight with those coward men who were none other than Krishna and Balram, who had come to capture the queens. There is a whole another pastime for it. I don't have time to go in details of that. You can read the purpose of this chapter. Prabhupada mentions about it also. So Arjuna says, my dear Lord, he goes back to Vyasadeva before coming to meet Yudhishthira, and then he asked Vyasadeva how it can happen. Then Vyasadeva told Arjuna that those were Krishna and Balram. And a very important lesson you to understand, you were invested with that power because Krishna wanted to make you an instrument in fulfilling his desire of becoming, for establishing dharma. When that was done at the end of Kurukshetra war and Ashwamedh Yajna was also done, then your teja was not required. Therefore, Krishna withdrew his power, which was invested in you. So all of us being Mamai Vamsu, Jivaloka, Jivbhuta, Sanatana, we are part and parcel of that, and we are invested with Krishna's energy. And we all have our own different unique talents. So point purpose is mentioning, first thing, we should not be proud. Second, we should utilize our powers, our strength and skills in the service of the Lord. And that's how it becomes devotional service, and that is a proper application of our talents and skills. Now, text number 6. Very, very interesting, another very important lesson. Very beautiful verse, interesting verse. Arjuna says, Yasya shana viyogena loko hi apriyadarshanaha uktena rahito hi esha maratakaha prochyate yatha. Yasya shana viyogena. Shan bhar, a moment separation from the Lord, have made this Priya, this material world which was so attractive to me before, Priya Darshana, has made this whole world intolerable for me. What was attractive to me before is appearing like repulsive to me, has become repulsive to me. Utkena rahito yesha mrataka prochate yatha. Now, why disappearance of Krishna have made Arjuna repulsive of this whole material world? Krishna is a super soul of this whole creation. He appears as Virat Rupa or the super soul. Now, how do you understand this? The experience that Arjuna is going through, all of us go through, but all of us will go through it regardless of your theist or atheist. Let me give an example. We can take the slide off if you still have the slide. Let me give an example. Imagine girlfriend, boyfriend, in love with each other, both are attracted to their beauty, etc. They get married and they live happily. However, unfortunately, due to certain situation, after 3 years of their marriage, let's say one of the partner dies. Husband and wife staying together, and apparently death occurs somewhere around, imagine around midnight. let's talk about, let's say a husband died. Now tell me, there is a single lady with a dead body in an apartment and nobody is in the house. How many of you think that lady would still have the courage to embrace the dead body? Or how many of you think that lady will get frightened now of the dead body? What do you think? How many of you think now she would be afraid of the body of her husband, or husband would be afraid of the body of the wife, or of mother, the child mother, whatever? And when the living entity was present in the body, they would embrace each other, they loved each other, they cared for each other. Now frightened. Why they are frightened? Why they are scared? So there are two answers for it. One answer that some of you could, today I cannot interact with you, so I would have to speak myself. So first answer people would give, or else you have time, you can type it on the chat box. So one of the answers that people will give, because the living entity have left the body, which is partly true, not exactly. The answer is the super soul have left the body. So the body was attractive to us because the Lord was present in the body. And the body has become repulsive to us because Lord is not present in the body. Therefore, Arjuna is also experiencing this repulsion from the whole world. Now the super soul of this whole creation have gone away. Therefore, Arjuna was feeling. So lesson number 2 for all of you. In Krishna's absence, what is attractive becomes repulsive. Are you guys writing down? समझ आ रहा है? मैं पूछने वाला हूँ तुम सभी से, हाँ? बैठे बैठे मुंह हिला रहे हैं यहाँ पर. So you have, write down the shloka number, so you have this. So Prabhupada mentions in the purport also, the very first line. Actually, for a living entity, there is no one dearer than the Lord. The Lord expands himself by innumerable part and parts of Swamsa Vimanamsha. So first thing you want to write down in lesson 2 is, what is attractive in another person is nothing but it is Krishna. And when Krishna leaves the body, the same person becomes repulsive or terrifying to us. That is lesson 2. And then now from verse number 7 to verse number 17, I will not read the verses, it will take time. I'll give you the translation now, where Arjuna recalls different instances from his life, how Krishna helped Arjuna. So let's begin from verse number 7 translation. Arjuna says, only by his strength I was able to win the Swayambara, which was planned, organized by Drupad, and win the hand of Draupadi in marriage. That is what Krishna says. Arjuna says, with my bow and arrow I could pierce the fish target and thereby gain the hand of Draupadi. Lesson number 3. Talent versus purpose. This is not mentioned here. I'm bringing this lesson because this incident is mentioned, but the reference is Bhagavad-Gita. 11th chapter, verse number 33, Krishna says, Nimittamatram bhava savisachi. What is the meaning of word savisachi? Anyone knows? Prabhupada describes the meaning of word savisachi means the expert bowman, one expert in bow and arrow. So Savisachi, Krishna called Arjuna Savisachi. And this is the incident where Krishna really proved his talent, his skill. It was a very difficult task. There were only 2 contenders who could have done that, Karna and Arjuna. Karna was rejected for certain disqualification, and Arjuna did that, and Arjuna was successful. Nobody could even hit near to the eye of the fish. Forget about hitting the eye of the fish that Arjuna had fit. Now, lesson number 3 that I'm talking about is talent versus purpose. Same highly talented and skillful Arjuna, when he entered the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he said, I will not fight. I will quit. Now tell me, how could his talent, now if he doesn't find the talent cannot be utilized, and he had come over there with the intention to establish dharma, they had waited for a good long 13 years for it, and now Arjuna comes and says, no, I will not use my talent here. The point I'm trying to make is, Bhagavad-Gita, the whole message of Bhagavad-Gita is, helps us redefine our purpose of life. All of us who are sitting here today or listening to this program, all of us would have observed, by studying Bhagavad-Gita, Bhagavad-Gita has given a meaning, has given a purpose to life. We had certain skill sets and talents which we were earlier using for our own sense gratification and getting frustrated time and again. Now, by understanding the message of Bhagavad-Gita, we are utilizing the same skills and talents and strengths that we have in the service of the Lord. We are doing good to oneself, we are doing good to all, and by that we are pleasing Lord Shri Krishna. So what does Bhagavad-Gita does? Bhagavad-Gita teaches us about the purpose. So being talented is not all in all, but to know the purpose of life is very important. And when a person has a purposeful life, or when his life is driven with a purpose, then his talents and skills are rightly or properly utilized. And that's how Arjuna, at the end of Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna asked, Arjuna, have you understood the message? Arjuna said, yes. Nashtamoha smriti labdha. My dear Lord, my illusion have been destroyed. Smriti labdha, I have regained my memory. Tat prasada maya achyuta. By your mercy, my ignorance have been dispelled and I have regained my memory. Nashtamoha smriti labdha tat prasadan maya achyuta. And then Arjuna says, Stitosmi gata sandeha karishe vachanam tava. And now, because of your mercy, Stitosmi, I have become firm, I have become fixed up in my intelligence. Why? Gata sandeha, all my doubts have been answered, have been cleared. And then Arjuna says, Karishe vachanam tava. Now, whatever you tell me, I will follow you. So two things happens when somebody goes through the message of Bhagavad Gita. His illusion goes away, his doubts are eradicated, illusion and doubts goes away, then his memory is regained, and he becomes firmly fixed in his purpose. What is the purpose of human form of life? Asatoma satgamaya tamsoma jyotirgamaya. To move from the darkness to the light, to go from the world of deathless to the world of immortality. That is lesson number 3, talent versus purpose. Let's go forward to the text number 8. And then in text number 8, Arjuna recalls the incident of Khandava 1. I will not read out the whole translation, I'll give you synopsis, because even reading translation will take time right now. We're too short of time. So here, he recalls the Khandava 1 incident and how by the mercy of Krishna, Arjuna was able to burn the whole Khandava 1, defeat Indra, and not only that, he was able to get the favor of Mayasur Danav, who, being obliged to Arjuna, built the Sabha Mahal for the Pandavas, like that. And what is it called as? Khandava Pras or Indrapras, right? They had established Indrapras. So something very important is mentioned in the purport, and that makes lesson number 4 for today. Let's see if I can pull out the middle of the purport here. So what Prabhupada mentioned here, when Maya Danav came out, Krishna wanted to kill Mayasur. But ultimately Mayasur Danav was not killed, and that Mayasur Danav went on to kill the Maya civilization or Mayan civilization of South America. We have discussed about the history of it in Legend of Lord Ramayana recently. So Maya Danav, Krishna wanted to kill Maya Danav, but why Mayasur Danav was survived or saved? It is mentioned that Mayasur took shelter of Arjuna. And when it took shelter of Arjuna, then Krishna forgave. So lesson number 4, Krishna is compassionate, but more compassionate are his devotees. So first of all, we should take shelter of the devotees of the Lord. If somebody takes shelter of the devotee of the Lord, and devotee of the Lord prays to the Lord for that surrendered soul or the one who's trying to take shelter, then Krishna would also give his mercy. We cannot get mercy of the Lord directly. So lesson number 4 is surrender to the devotee of the Lord. Lesson number 4 is Krishna is compassionate, but more devotees, his devotees are more compassionate. So therefore, we should take shelter of the devotees of the Lord. Then text number 9, Arjuna remembers that how, my dear Lord, he tells Yudhishthira, your younger brother Bhimsen, who is so powerful, was able to kill Jarasandha because of the mercy of the Lord. If the fight went on for almost 28 days, and finally both were exasperated, exhausted of fighting with each other. Nobody was able to defeat. And then finally Krishna indicated to Bhimsen, tear him apart from between, because that's how he was joined by Jara demoness, like that. In the purport comes an interesting lesson. Lesson number 5, Prabhupada mentioned. We'll read out this highlighted portion from the purport. Second paragraph says, Jarasandha possessed demoniac qualities from birth. Naturally, he became a great devotee of Lord Shiva, who is the Lord of all ghostly and demoniac men. Ravana was a great devotee of Shiva, so also Jarasandha. So what is being described by Srila Prabhupada here is, you talk about the best of the demons, the great demons, most of them generally are worshippers of Lord Shiva or Brahma. The point which is mentioned here, for example, Ashwatthama. Does anyone know how Ashwatthama was born? Ashwatthama was also born by the blessing of Lord Shiva. And you know what Ashwatthama did later on, where he was personally cursed by Krishna. I don't remember any incident where Krishna have cursed anyone. Only incident that I know of, when Rama had threw a stone in the ocean, and when the stone was thrown by Rama, the stone drowned. And Lord Ram looked at Hanuman and he said, wait a second, you are throwing a stone and the stones are floating. When I threw the stone drowned. And Hanumanji said, my dear Lord, the one who you reject, who will give shelter to that person? So that's the only incident that we know of prior to Lord Shri Krishna, where Lord have rejected somebody. And here Krishna cursed Ashwatthama. Our Dronacharya had performed austerity to please Shiva. And by the blessing of Lord Shiva, Ashwatthama was born like that. So the point here is, the Lord Shiva is one of the best of the devatas of this material world. Even by worshipping Lord Shiva, heart does not get purified. That is the point Prabhupada is trying to make. Ravana was also a devotee of Lord Shiva. So the relationship between the followers and devatas is of give and take relationship. Whereas when somebody worships Krishna, like Dhruva Maharaj wanted a kingdom greater than the kingdom of his great grandfather Brahmaji. And when he had darshan of the Lord, Lord said, ask a benediction. And Dhruva said, my dear Lord, I came with the desire for broken pieces of glasses. By your darshan, I have got access to the diamond. I don't need anything. So the process of his devotional activity, the tapasya that he performed to please Lord Vishnu, actually purified his heart. So worship of Vishnu does not only set you free from your karmic reactions, but also burns the sinful desires. That is lesson number 5, difference between the worship or devotion to devatas and Lord Vishnu. Your heart gets purified, unlike in the worship of devatas. Text number 10, Arjuna talks about insult being offered to Draupadi, because insult was done to Draupadi, and therefore all the men who were assembled at the assembly were killed. So a very interesting and important lesson. Prabhupada mentioned the purport also. If you see here, in other words, if you see in the purport now, in other words, all the wives of the Kuru family became widows because the Shastra insulting a great devotee of the Lord. So lesson number 6 is beware of Vaishnava Prad. Lord Shri Krishna himself says, why I have orchestrated this Kurukshetra war? It was decided the day Draupadi was insulted. Every man who was assembled in assembly had to be killed. Not only those who committed aparadh, but those who saw aparadh. Again, there's a whole science of aparadh. Can't discuss details right now. But who even witnessed aparadh? Even those who were present in the assembly. Vidurji was not present. Vidurji had left the assembly. Therefore, Vidurji survived. Those who were present, everyone was killed. Of course, Dhritarashtra survived, but Dhritarashtra later on got the mercy of Vidura that way. So why? Because Vaishnava Prad. So lesson 6 from this incident of Draupadi, insult to Draupadi and what happened in Kurukshetra war, we learn how grievous offense it is to offend a Vaishnava like that. Prabhupada writes in the end of the purport, by insulting a great soul, one has to forego all the results of all pious acts and benedictions one have received by their austerities. Text number 11. Then Arjuna remembers about Durvasa Muni incident, and how, my dear Lord, you protected us from the Durvasa Muni incident. Draupadi just offered you one piece of grain, and by consuming that piece of grain, you satisfied the belly of Durvasa and his 50,000 disciples. So Prabhupada here describes the whole story in the purport. And then comes lesson number 7. Very, very important lesson from this incident of Durvasa Muni. And Prabhupada writes, where does he write? Yes. This is the lesson. The importance of offering prasadam. So Draupadi had just offered one grain to Krishna, and by consuming that, everyone had become satisfied. So Srila Prabhupada mentions when someone offers bhoga to the Lord and then honors it as mercy, this Arjuna said, Tat prasadam maya achyutaha. So when he accepts that bhoga as a prasadam after offering to the Lord, then that prasadam purifies his body, purifies his intelligence, and purifies his consciousness. And when the mind, body, intelligence, and consciousness becomes purified, what naturally person becomes satisfied. So let me ask a question, simple question to all of you. Those of you are practicing Krishna consciousness, and this is a very, very central part of a Krishna conscious activity, to only eat Krishna prasadam. It's a must do. How many of you agree before coming to Krishna consciousness and now after practicing Krishna consciousness, you experience far greater satisfaction and happiness in your life? Please raise your hands. And that is a point Prabhupada is mentioning about importance of bhoga offering. Just by offering bhoga, Srila Rupa Goswami says in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Sevan mukhe hi jivado, atha Shri Krishna namadi na bhavet grayam indriye, sevan mukhe hi jivado swayameva spratiyada. By our gross senses, we cannot have the darshan of the Lord, but we can have the darshan of the Lord once we begin our devotional service. Sevan mukhe hi jivado. Devotional service begins with the mouth. Mouth means the tongue, and tongue has two functions, to taste and to chatter, to help in creating sound. So by creating sound, creating the sound vibration of the holy names of the Lord, speaking, glorifying the Lord. And second thing, utilizing the tongue for tasting Krishna prasadam. So importance of offering bhoga. And Prabhupada said, every householder must offer food to the Lord, which means you should not consume anything which is not offered to the Lord. So no chaat pakode from outside shop. No going outside in restaurants and eating anything. That's the point here. Lesson number 7. Moving to text number 12. Another very interesting lesson here. And the storyline which is discussed is Arjuna says, My dear Lord, because of your mercy, even the greatest of all, Lord Shiva, was pleased with me, and all other devtas were pleased. Lord Shiva could, Arjuna and Lord Shiva had a direct combat. Lord Shiva came in the disguise of an hunter. So that is what is mentioned, that even Lord Shiva could not defeat me because of his mercy. And he was so pleased with me that he benedicted with me, or blessed me with his most powerful weapon, like that Arjuna remembers. So here comes lesson number 8. Prabhupada mentioned. The idea is that one who is favored by Lord Shiva or any other demigod may not necessarily be favored by Supreme Personality Godhead. What it means is Arjuna was a devotee of the Lord, one who becomes devotee of Lord Shri Krishna, but naturally becomes dear to all the devtas, just like Arjuna became dear to all the devtas. So Prabhupada is making that devotees become by natural devotion to the Krishna, they become dear to all the devtas, but those who are dear to devtas naturally do not become dear to Krishna unless they serve Krishna. So those who are devotees of Krishna are by default serving all the devtas also. That's your lesson number 8. Many times people are afraid, oh, if I stop the worship of so and so devta, would my Ishta devta be angry? This is a story and this is an incident from the scripture. Prabhupada mentions about it in the purport also. No, in fact, they'll be far much more pleased. Finally, you have chosen the right master. Text number 13, he talks about how, in text number 13, Arjuna talks about that how he was able to kill Nivata Kavach, a very powerful demon who even the Devtas could not kill. And Arjuna requested, Indra requested Arjuna to kill Nivat Kavach. Here comes the lesson number 9 in the purport from the story. The story is, the lesson is not the story. I don't have time for the lessons. A story, sorry. So I'll just give you the lessons here. You can read out. So lesson is given in front of you. Which number of lesson it is now? 9 number. The Lord is all powerful. By His grace, His pure devotee can be as powerful as he may desire, and there is no limit to it. The point is, just like Srila Prabhupada at the age of 70, he went to West, and for next 12 years he traveled all over the world. And he didn't always had a comfortable journey, and his schedules were so tight, so hectic. Wherever he was, every evening he'll wake up by midnight, and he'll rest of the night he will dictate, and then early morning go for a walk, chant his rounds, give class, then rest of the day keep meeting with people, meetings, interactions, whatnot, and only sleep from 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock, maybe lesser than that, for 2-3 hours, and then work whole day. And in less than 12 years, he opened 108 temples. 108 temples. In 12 years, you cannot even get 108 devotees chant 16 rounds. If all of us, Maharathis, if we are put into the field of Kurukshetra, which means in this world, and let's say fight with Maya and make 100 devotees, forget about making 108 devotees chanting 16 rounds, making 100 devotees chant one round of Hare Krishna Mahamantra in 12 years will be considered that you are spatially empowered. It is not easy to make devotees. And here Srila Prabhupada, an elderly person, opened 108 temples. That is a point. If Krishna wants, he can empower anyone, even beyond anyone's imagination. What Prabhupada did was beyond any imagination, any human calculation. That is lesson number 9. By the grace of Krishna or by the grace of the pure devotee of the Lord, both, a devotee can excel and perform anything. Therefore, it is mentioned in Madhya Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mukham karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim gyat kripatam aham vande paramananda madhavam Shri Guru Dinatarinam. Mukham karoti vachalam, the one who is deaf and dumb, does not know how to speak, what to speak, can become an eloquent speaker by the mercy of the Lord. Mukham karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim. Giri means mountain. One who is lame, who cannot walk, can cross over the mountain. Yat kripatam aham vande paramananda madhavam. One who has received the mercy of the Lord can perform all the superhuman acts. That's the text number 13. Text number 14 talks about from 14 to 17. 14 talks about the fight on behalf of the king of Virat with the whole army of Kurukshetra, the whole army of Kauravas. And then 15 to 17 talks about how Krishna protected Arjuna at the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So here text number 14 to 17 talks about how Krishna protected. Text number 15 talks about how he had to fight with the great warriors like Bhishma, Drona, Shalya. And then text number 16 also talks about various other great warriors like Karna, Jayadratha, etc. And text number 17, then he talks about how the day when he had taken a vow to kill Jayadratha, his horses had become extremely thirsty for running at high speed for a long amount of time. And in the middle of the battlefield, Krishna asked Arjuna to shoot an arrow on the ground and bring Mother Ganges so that horses can satisfy their thirst. And Krishna requested Arjuna that the horses need to rest. Now you're in the middle of the war, surrounded by enemies, and you're resting. I mean, that is only expected from Kali Yuga Prani, who can take a nap anywhere. But to expect from Arjuna to take a nap in the Upper Yuga, that in the middle of the war, it's unimaginable. So enemies are shooting, but how Arjuna survived? Krishna protected. Those are details from Mahabharata. Verse number 17 talks about it. And then from verse number 18 to verse number 23 comes where Arjuna expresses his, the feelings of separation from Lord Shri Krishna. Verse number 18 to 23. So here, okay, I'll read out the translations directly now. Verse number 18 to 23. O king, his jokes and frank talks were pleasing and beautifully decorated with smiles, and he would address me, O son of Pratha, O friend, O son of Kuru dynasty. All such hearty dealings are now remembered by me, and thus I am overwhelmed. Generally, text number 19, both of us used to live together and sleep, sit and loiter together at the time of advertising oneself for acts of chivalry. Sometimes, if there were any irregularity, I used to chastise him by saying, my friend, you're very truthful. Even in those hours when his value was minimized, he being the Supreme Soul, used to tolerate all those utterings of mine, excusing me exactly as a true friend excuses a true friend, or a father excuses his son. Wait a second. There was one more lesson. From verse number 14 to verse number 17, where Krishna's protection is mentioned, there comes lesson number 10. Lord Shri Krishna in Bhagavad-Gita says, Kantiha pratijanihi name bhakta pranashati. Which chapter is this? Who remembers? In which chapter Lord Shri Krishna says, Arjuna, declare boldly, my devotees do not perish? Which chapter? Chapter number 9. So there are two kinds of protection. One is protection to the body, one is protection of the consciousness. So we see how Arjuna was protected again and again through the war of Kurukshetra, also was protected in the war with the Kurus, and at the end of the Agyatavas. So yes, Krishna protected the body of Arjuna because Arjuna was selected as an instrument to fulfill Krishna's desire to establish dharma. So in our case, for some of us or for many of us, Krishna may or may not protect our body. But one thing is for sure, when Krishna says, Kantya pratijani nami bhakta pranashid, one thing is for sure. Many times people ask the question, what will happen if I'm not able to remember Krishna at the end of my life? I have served Krishna all through, but the pain is so much at the time of death. What if I'm not able to remember Krishna? So Srila Ramanujacharya says in this context, don't worry. His disciple asked a similar question. So Srila Ramanujacharya said, don't worry. Krishna will force his way and make you remember him. That is what it means by Name Bhakta Pranashati. So that is lesson number 10 from the verse 14 to 17 about Krishna's protection is guaranteed. Text number 18 we discussed, 18, 19, text number 20. O Emperor, now I am separated from my friend, dear most well-wisher, the Supreme Personality Godhead, therefore my heart appears to be void of everything. In his absence, I have been defeated by a number of infidel, coward men when I was guarding the bodies of all the wives of Krishna. I have already discussed this. A very important purport. Mark a purport for yourself. Krishna answers, how come Krishna's wife can get kidnapped? And Prabhupada goes from Vishnu Puran and Brahma Puran. It's a homework for you to find out the reason why Krishna's wife got kidnapped and how could they get kidnapped. And then comes text number 21. Now because Krishna have disappeared, I have become bereft of all my powers. And he says, Arjuna says, I had the very same Gandiva bow, the same arrow, the same chariot drawn by the same horses. I used them as the same Arjuna to whom all the kings offered their due respects. But in the absence of Krishna, all of them at a moment's notice have become null and void. It is exactly like offering. He is talking about how he had to face defeat at the hand of the simple cowherd boys. So a very beautiful purport and a very famous line here. Here it is. I was just verifying from my book. Prabhupada writes, very, very often quoted point. As we have discussed more than once, one should not be proud of by borrowed plumes. Discussions are talent and skills. All energies and powers are derived from the Supreme Source, Lord Shri Krishna, and they act as long as he desires and cease to function as soon as he withdraws. Which should be again the same lesson. We should always remember who is the source of our strength and talents. Like that. And then from verse number 24 onwards, now verse number 22 and 23, Arjuna reveals the truth about Krishna and Yaduvamsha, saying that how Krishna have concluded his Leela and Yaduvamsha have also concluded their Leela like this. And then in the text number 24, Arjuna talks about something very interesting. Actually, this all happened, the destruction of Yaduvamsha, by the supreme will of the Lord. Sometimes people kill one another, and at other times they protect one another. Very, very important purport, golden purport. Purport talks about the law of struggle, like that. And then 25 to 26 verses, he gives the reasons for destruction of Yadus. Why Lord Shri Krishna orchestrated destruction of Yadus? Text number 25 and 26. Arjuna says, O king, as in the ocean, the bigger and stronger aquatic swallow the smaller and weaker ones, so also the Supreme Personality Godhead, to lighten the burden of the earth, has engaged the stronger Yadu to kill the weaker and the bigger Yadu to kill the smaller. A very important purport. Again, you can title it as the principle of material world. What is the fundamental principle of material world? Ahastani sahastanam apadami chatuspadam Palgu tatra mahatam jivo jivasya jivanam. Those who do not have hand become object of exploitation. Those who have hands. Those who do not have feet become exploited by those who have legs. Ahastani, Falgu tatra mahatam. Falgu means those who are weaker become exploited by those who are stronger. Jivo jivasya jivanam. And this is the rule of the world. Therefore, very important purport. This is a material world. And Prabhupada writes, we can read out a few points. Very, very important. This is something which we should memorize, the purport itself. Particularly which I am saying, they are very important purport. You really want to memorize what Prabhupada is saying there. In the material world, the struggle for existence and survival of the fittest are laws. Because in the material world, there is a disparity. There is a lot of discussion about bringing everyone on the same level, men and women, the poor and rich, everyone, bringing equilibrium, everyone be treated equally. It never happens, nowhere happens. Those who are talking about treating equally, they would also have servants at their home. So what is the question of treating equally? So why there is so much disparity in the material universe or the material world? Prabhupada mentions here. There is disparity due to everyone's desire to lord over the material resources. This very mentality of lording over the material nature is the root cause of conditioned life, and to give the facility to such imitation lords, the illusory energy of the Lord has created a disparity between conditioned living beings by creating stronger and the weaker in every species of life and every segment of life or every field of life. Either be wealth, either be the beauty, the strength, the skills, talents, whatnot. You'll always have somebody who is better than you, and you'll have somebody who is weaker than you. So that is lesson number 12. Why there is disparity in the material universe? Because this is the desire of the conditioned living entity to lord over the material nature resources. However, the spiritual world is a place of equality. There is no disparity, there is no duality. And then text number 27. So I see we are 9-7 or 9-8 now. So I want to quickly check with all of you. How many of you are fine if I go 10 minutes ahead and conclude the chapter? Because now I'll be more brief. And how many of you, those of you who are online, think Prabhu continue next week? आज के लिए काफ़ी है lessons का digest करना. So please give your inputs on the chat. I'm looking at the chat box. What you decide, and then we'll continue from 27th verse. Hare Krishna. So till the time I get a feedback, I'll continue. All right. We'll not waste the time here. Text number 27. So after discussing all this, Arjuna has got affected by lamentation. So how did Arjuna came over the lamentation is being discussed in verse number 27 onwards. So here the importance of message of Bhagavad-Gita is highlighted. Desha kalartha yuktani rittapo pashamani cha haranti smaratas-chittam govindabhihitani me. So I am attracted to those instructions imparted to me by the Supreme Lord, because they are impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space. So lesson number 13, Bhagavad-Gita prepares us to face the crisis. Lesson number 13, we can see this is the example of the incident. So those of you who are documenting the lessons, you can leave a space later on, write down the incidents from Mahabharata, which are, we are briefly discussing. That's how those lessons will get properly cemented in your consciousness. So Prabhupada mentioned the purport only. Arjuna wanted to remember the great teachings of Bhagavad-Gita to teach all concerned that Bhagavad-Gita can be consulted in all critical times, and not only for solace from all kind of mental agonies, but also for the way out of great entanglements which may embarrass one in the most critical hour. So the message of Bhagavad-Gita prepares us for facing crisis. And then verse number 28 to 31 describes how Arjuna became freed from all the lamentation. Text number 14, text number 28. Text number 28, Arjuna says, let's read out the shloka, interesting shloka. Sutavacha evam chintayato jishnu krishna pada saroruham sauhardenati gadena Santa Siddhvimala Mati. Deeply absorbed in thinking of the instructions of the Lord, which were imparted in the great intimacy of friendship and thinking of his lotus feet, Arjuna's mind became pacified and free from all material contamination. So text number 28, here in the purport talks about benefits of learning Bhagavad Gita. What are the benefits of learning Bhagavad Gita? This verse is similar to the verse which I quoted before from Bhagavad Gita. Nashtamoha smriti labdha. So what are the benefits of learning Bhagavad Gita? Two things happen. Ignorance is driven away and all doubts are eradicated. And another two things happen. What happens? First, smriti labdha, you regain your original consciousness and the part and parcel of the Supreme Personality Godhead. And second thing, one becomes firmly situated in his devotional service towards the Lord. That's what Bhagavad Gita gives. In fact, four things happen. Two things are taken away and two things are given. Taken away are the illusion and the doubts, and given is firm faith in Krishna and our realization of original constitutional position. That is the benefit of learning Bhagavad Gita, lesson number 14. Text number 29, 30 talks about how Arjuna, after remembering those instructions, became freed from all the material contaminations. He became established in a Shuddha Sattva like this. And then text number 32, after this, Arjuna stopped speaking. The question arises, when Arjuna have told Yudhishthira Maharaj what happened to Krishna, how did Yudhishthira reacted? It is mentioned here. Nishamaya Bhagavan Magam Samstham Yadukulasya Cha Swapathaya Matam Chakre Nibhritatma Yudhishthira. Upon hearing of Lord Krishna's return of his abode and understanding the end of Yadu dynasty, Maharaj Yudhishthira decided to go back home, back to Godhead. So Yudhishthira Maharaj decided to retire. What happened with Mother Kunti when Mother Kunti heard this news that Lord Shri Krishna had departed? So text number 33, Kunti, after overhearing Arjuna's telling of the end of Yaduvamsha, she also decided to engage herself in a devotional service, full attention, and she also gained release from the course of material existence. So she also stopped her material duties and took to the path of renunciation in that way, which means dedicated herself. However, when this discussion was going on, text number 34 is a little detour in the conversation. How Yudhishthira reacted, how Kunti reacted. But suddenly Sutta Goswami speaks text number 34. What is text number 34? It is not actual according to the flow. Sutta Goswami says, the Supreme Unborn Lord Shri Krishna caused the members of the Yadu Vamsha to relinquish their bodies, and he relieved the burden of the world. This action was like picking out a thorn with a thorn, though both are the same to the controller. Why suddenly Sutta Goswami is remembering the action of Lord Shri Krishna in killing of the Yadus? Because some of the sages assembled there were feeling very sad. Why Krishna had to do like this? He could have planned out differently, for Yadu Vamshas to wind up their Leela. Why engage them in a ghastly warfare? So therefore Sutta Goswami spoke, this action was like picking out a thorn with a thorn. When there is a thorn, you pick out a thorn with a thorn. Similarly, the Yadu Vamshas were very powerful, and the only way to annihilate them if they fight with each other. Therefore, Krishna chose that path. So, very important purport. And the text number 35 talks about Krishna disappeared like this. And text number 36 talks about when Krishna disappeared. Yada mukundo bhagavan imam mahim jaho satanva shravaniya satkataha tadahare pratibudha chetasam abhadra hetu kalir anvavartata. Kalir anvavarta. As soon as Krishna disappeared, Kali Yuga fully manifested. The personality of Kali manifested completely. Sutta Goswami says in the 3rd chapter of the 1st canto, same thing he says, Krishne Sudhama Upagate Dharma Jnanadivi Saha. When Krishna disappeared, along with that Dharma and Jnana also disappeared. And then it is said, Kalau Nashtadrshamesha. In the absence of Krishna, in the absence of Dharma, Jnana, and in the presence of Kali Yuga, when Kali descended, Nashtadrshamesha, it destroyed the vision. In other words, it covered the vision of every living entity and filled their heart with deceit, anger, greed, envy, pride, whatnot. However, at that point of time, Puranan Kudonoditaha, the arc of all Puranas, which is Srimad Bhagavatam, arose. So, what is Krishna's disappearance compared to the sunset? When the sun sets, immediately the whole sky gets engulfed by darkness. However, when Krishna disappeared, yes, the Kali manifested and it engulfed the whole creation with darkness. But Srimad Bhagavatam, the text like Srimad Bhagavatam also appeared, which until today is counteracting the influences of Kali Yuga. Therefore, Prabhupada mentioned in the purport, one can, this is lesson number 16, one can neutralize the effects of Kali by keeping himself fully under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I quoted the verse, Purana Kudunodita, Srimad Bhagavatam arose, which is not different than the Lord. So Krishna's disappearance compared to sunset, and the Kali's descendant compared to the darkness, which happens after that. So we can save ourselves. So two things, the lesson number 15 and 16. Lesson number 15 is, as soon as Krishna disappears, there is a darkness. As soon as the great soul disappears, there is a time of a lot of conflict. And that's what happened with ISKCON after Srila Prabhupada's disappearance also. And lesson number 16, how to save ourselves from the evil effects and influences of Kali. That is lesson number 16, taking shelter of the Supreme Personality Godhead, manifesting through the holy names of the Lord and Srimad Bhagavatam. Then text number 37, it is mentioned that how Yudhishthira Maharaj decided to depart for the forest. Maharaj Yudhishthira was intelligent enough to understand the influence of the age of Kali, characterized by avarice, which means greed, falsehood, cheating, violence, throughout the capital, state, home, and among individuals. So he wisely prepared himself to leave home and he dressed accordingly. Prahlad Maharaj, the very first thing, Hiranyakashipu asked Prahlad, what is the best thing you have learned in the school? And Prahlad Maharaj said, the best thing that I have learned in the school, which is according to the sages says the best thing to do in this world is Tasadu manne asuravarya dehinam sada sabudvigna dhyam asadgraha hitvatmapatam grahandakupam vanam gato yadharim ashrayeta. The best thing, the people who consider the body to be self, dehinam, grahandakupam, asadgrahat, who have taken the material life, the possessions to be all in all, their destination is hit atma patam, to the hellish condition of life. That's what they live. Sada samadvigna dhyam asadgrahat. Sada samadvigna dhyam, intelligence is samadvigna, is always filled with anxiety, one who considers the body to be self and material life all in all. To get delivered from this situation of anxiety, pain, and suffering, the sadhu mane, the sages advised, vanam gato yad arimashrita, leave everything, go to the forest and take shelter of the Supreme Personality Godhead. And that is what Yudhishthira Maharaj is also doing here. That is what is described here. Text number 38. Did Yudhishthira Maharaj accepted detachment, or he became detached and renounced and left suddenly? No, devotees are not irresponsible. Text number 18, lesson number 18 for today. Lesson number 18 is detachment does not, 18, right? Or 17? 17. Oh, 17, yeah, 17 lesson was from the previous verse, text number 37. How swiftly and easily Yudhishthira Maharaj gave up his kingdom. So lesson number 17 is devotee naturally develops detachment. Devotees of the Lord naturally develops detachment. There are yogis and Mayavadis who have to practice detachment. Yudhishthira Maharaj, living in all the comforts, performing a duty of the king, could easily give up. Why? Because detachment is a subset of bhakti. Jnana and vairagya automatically develops for a devotee. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Jnanam Chayat Ahitukam. No, okay? Janayati Asu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayat Ahitukam. So, Ahitukam, by the causeless mercy of the Lord, those who are practicing bhakti of Vasudev, serving the Lord, Jnana Vairagya naturally develops. That's the lesson number 17. Devotee naturally becomes detached. Lesson number 18 is, what did Yudhishthira Maharaj do when he decided to walk away? Swarar putram vinayinam atmana shushamam gune toya nivaya patim bhume abhyasinchad gajavaye. In the capital of Hastinapur, he enthroned Parikshit Maharaj as the king of the whole world. So many times devotees of the Lord get this comment, oh, you are irresponsible, you do not want to perform your duties, therefore you have taken to bhakti, you are finding an easy way out of life, you are living on the charity of others, particularly meant for renounced order. They think you have given up your family life, not family life, you have given up your responsibilities, occupation, etc., and become a brahmachari because you want to live a cozy and easy life. No. Very important, lesson number 18. Please mark it. This is something important for every one of us, and we struggle with this. We struggle with irresponsible behavior. Devotees are highly responsible, and in that, renounced order have to set an example of responsibility. Therefore, temple has to be neat and clean. The centers have to be completely neat and clean. We cannot leave things dirty. We cannot live in tamoguna when we are living in a place of the Lord. So the devotee means who is highly responsible. Therefore, what is a brahmachari life? Narada describes in the 7th canto what is a brahmachari life. He says, Brahmachari Guru Kule Vasandanto Gurur Hitam. Vasandanto Gurur Hitam. What is the third line which is mentioned? That was, and the last line is Guruhu Suhid Sauhridaha. In other words, brahmachari lives his life for the pleasure and satisfaction of a guru, and he lives in a gurukul with the guru. That's the point which is mentioned. Acharandasa Nicho. And what is his attitude? Of a sevak. Nicho, humble servant. And he lives very responsibly and for the pleasure of guru, like that. So text number 38, lesson number 18, detachment does not mean irresponsible life. In fact, devotees are highly responsible. Example of Yudhishthira Maharaj. I hope all of you are writing the case study. Otherwise, this lessons means nothing to you. If you don't have an example to relate to the lesson, then you don't have anything to emulate in your life. How do you say that I have to follow this lesson if I don't know who practiced it? Therefore, I'm giving you these lessons. Then Vajanab, text number 39, was made the king of Mathura. That is what is mentioned. And then text number 40 onwards is described how Yudhishthira Maharaj gave up his kingdom. From 49 verse to 43, 44 is described about the process of renunciation that happened or occurred with Yudhishthira Maharaj. So, lesson number 19. What is my exit plan? So here in these 4 verses, Prabhupada speaks and emphasizes on Varnashram Dharma, Brahmachari, Grahastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyasi. Sannyasi, Prabhupada says, 15 to 20 years before a person dies, should give up his household life. So earlier the human life duration was around 100 years. So it was assumed when you become 80, at that time you should give up any and every connection with your family life. So the moment you become 81, you should be sannyasi. That is the logic. 81 leads to sannyasi. At the age of 50, you enter into vanaprastha. Now you have performed your household duties, you have raised your kids, got them married, and now you take care of, you fully dedicate yourself in the service of the Lord. You are allowed to live with your wife, but at the age of 80 and beyond that, you are supposed to take sannyas. The importance of it is mentioned in these 4 verses. I don't have time to discuss. But what is my exit plan? So I always talk to the congregation for that. Now, today we don't have 100 years, we don't even have 80 years. On an average, you can say the median life for any individual is between 60 to 70. Is that good enough? Or am I being too hopeless about today's society? 60 to 70 is good enough? To live that long is special blessing in today's world. So if 60, 70 is going to be our duration, which means by 50, by sure we should be concluding our material activities. At least after 50, we should dedicate ourselves fully to the service of the Lord. And if you want to wind up your things by 50, now do a reverse engineering that how you should prepare for yourself for that. What is your age now? By that time, how old should be your kids? Your kids should get married, etc., etc. That is called as, in true sense, family planning. Family planning is not about having 2 kids. Family planning is about having an exit plan to serve the Lord. All right. So that's lesson number 19. I've given you some clues and hints for your family planning or for your exit plan. That's lesson number 19. Moving on, text number 45. I'm not going to show the screen now. That's not needed. So text number 45. So how did brothers reacted? So text number 45 talks about. Okay, I might have to show the screen also actually. Text number 45. So when Arjuna and everyone saw that Yudhishthira Maharaj is leaving, Pandavas immediately, all the four brothers also decided to follow behind the elder brother, Yudhishthira Maharaj. They also chose Krishna, text number 46. And then what is the result? 47, 48 talks about for all the Pandavas choosing Krishna and leaving their responsibilities. Thus, by pure consciousness and constant remembrance of the Lord, they went back home, back to Godhead. That's text number 48. What happened to Vidur uncle? Viduropi parityajya prabhase deham atmana. Being absorbed in Krishna at Prabhashet, Vidura also gave up his body and went back to Pitralok. He came from Pitralok, he's Yamaraj. So Vidurji went back to Yamlok. Text number 15. But what about me? The ladies. What happened to the ladies? Draupadi cha tadagnya patinam anapekshata vasudeve bhagavati vi ekantamatir. So Gandhari and Draupadi and Subhadra were left behind. So Draupadi, when she saw her husbands leaving home, she knew well about Lord Vasudev. She and Subhadra became absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and attained the same results as their husband. And the final lesson for today, lesson number 20, a golden puppet, very important for mothers particularly to read, and everyone should read it. And the lesson number 20 heading is fly your own plane. So Prabhupada mentions here, the help is offered. We'll read from here. This is very, very important quotation, often quoted. Let's take a look here. At the end of life, when one has to go back home, back to Godhead, everyone has to take care of himself without help rendered by another. All the help is offered on the ground before flying in space. So all the training for the pilot can happen on the ground, not when he has taken off. Similarly, the spiritual master, father, mother, relatives, husband, others can render all kind of help during one's lifetime. Oh, Guranga, Sangya. Okay, something happened on my screen. Oh, aa gaya. Yes. So, how do I go here? ठीक है. aa gaya, ठीक है. Similarly, the spiritual master, they can render help during one's lifetime, teaching how to cross the ocean of birth and death. But while crossing the sea, one has to take care of himself and utilize the instructions formally received. A very famous analogy and example quoted by Prabhupada, which we often quote. Everyone has to fly their own plane. All the help is available on the ground. Like that. That's the lesson number 20. And because all of you have heard so patiently, so attentively, there has to be a blessing given to all of you. So I will not give it. I have no qualification to give. But Shuddha Goswami, which means Vyasa, gives a blessing. And what is that? Ya Shraddhai Tad Bhagavat Priyanam Pando Sutanam Iti Samprayanam Shnoti Yalam Swastyayanam Pavitram Latha Harau Bhaktim Upaiti Siddhim. The subject of the departure of the sons of Pandu for the ultimate goal of life, back to Godhead, is fully auspicious and perfectly pure. Anyone who hears this narration with devotional faith certainly gains the devotional service of the Lord, the highest perfection of life. So those who have heard with attention and have developed faith gets love of Godhead. With that, we conclude our discussion for today, closing with some few last slides here. Slide is visible properly? Yes? All right. So we have discussed all this. concluding quote. We have discussed many times before that the system of Varnashram Dharma, as it was strictly followed by the inhabitants of the world, specifically by those who inhabited the Aryavrat province of the world, emphasizes the importance of leaving all household connections at a certain stage of life. The training and education was so imparted, and thus a respectable person like Maharaj Yudhishthir had to leave all family connection for self-realization. Going back home, back to Godhead, no king or respectable gentleman will continue family life till the end. I read out loudly. All of you read out. No king or respectable gentleman would continue family life till the end, because that was considered suicidal and against the interest of the perfection of human life. In order to be free from all family encumbrances and devote oneself 100% the devotion service of the Lord, the system is always recommended for everyone, because it is a path of authority. Very, very important purpose. I didn't have time, so I just gave you a synopsis. Look into the purport, but we definitely discuss the 20 lessons. So what happens next? Okay, 20 lessons. I have not written down the 20 lessons. So here is for all of you. We'll request our admins to open the English Srimad Bhagavatam WhatsApp group. And I would like to see all of you sharing what lessons you have learned or written down. Please share on the WhatsApp. And by today evening, I'll collate all that. And if I think they're on the right track, I'll add it to this slide. And this presentation will be uploaded on your student portal from where you can download. All right. So please do this exercise for today. And now, Kali have descended. So how Parikshit Maharaj received the age of Kali is the chapter 16, the last 4 chapters of the first canto, 16, 17, 18, and 19. In the next 1 month, we'll be concluding the first canto in that way. So with that, we conclude here for today. Thank you for your kind attention. We discussed few important things. First, about how can Krishna be killed just by an arrow, a single arrow. Can Krishna be ever killed? Who was Jara and what happened to him? And then we discussed about the 20 lessons from the chapter 15, from Arjuna's remembrance and from Yudhishthira Maharaj's decision of leaving everything to prepare himself to go back home, back to Godhead. And like that, we have discussed 20 lessons for today. Thank you very much and everyone for your kind attention. Our time is way beyond. Schedule is 8 to 9 class, 9 to 9:30 question answers. So I would not be able to take questions today. However, whoever has a question, you can either leave on the chat box now here, or you can ping on the group itself. We'll be opening, I'll request to open the groups, WhatsApp group, English Bhagavatam group. Probably they're open by now. So those of you who have questions, you can post your question on the WhatsApp group and I'll reply on the WhatsApp group for everyone. So thank you so much for joining for today's discussion. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki.